Welcome, everyone, to the Eddie Network podcast. I'm glad to have you here today, and I'm meeting someone for the first time. So, introduce yourself, Mary, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Mary Willcox Smith, and I added the Willcox, which is my maiden name, back in when I wrote my book. And it's because I liked my maiden name. It had two L's. It was sort of interesting. And I'm married to John Smith. So we are Mary and John Smith, and I decided I needed the Willcox back in there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's fun fact number one about
I like
Mary.
that. That's
Yeah.
very
And
good.
he's Dutch and he's John Willem, but nobody in, and he's Canadian, but nobody in North America can say more than a syllable. So, anyways, and when we moved to Argentina, people were sure. I remember someone saying, I'm watching the newspapers. I'm sure you're not for real. So
Huh.
I have four daughters who were born within 5 years. And I kind of went into parenting thinking, I don't know, it's going to be like my life was, try to make everything be perfect because that's how you get your worth. That's how you feel good. Work hard, do
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And it's really not. It's very different, right? And so we had some really dark years. And I come from trauma as well. So and we all do. I have some kind of big stuff, but I kind of outran it. And when you have kids, a lot of that bubbles to the surface because you love them so much. You're triggered, right? Stress triggers us. Pressure triggers us. So we had some really dark years, and I've got four really amazing daughters who are doing well. And the last one just graduated from college, and they're all doing well. And so I decided that I needed to help parents do it differently because first of all, I thought I could do it. Like I've got skills, I've got personal skills, I've got all kinds of skills. It's not always what it takes. And I outsourced to therapists. And I'm not saying we don't need therapists, but I think sometimes in our culture now, we think someone else can fix it, right? We got a tutor, we got extra coaches, we got this. And therapists have a place, right? 100%. But with a kid, that bond really wants to be built with the parent. So
yeah.
I'd rather them be building that bond because
Mhm.
the whole point of the therapist is to calm them, give them a safe space so they can, let things out and experience things.
Yeah,
So I work only with the parents. I'll bring in the kid every now and then if that's what they want to do. But generally, I work with parents because what I felt like I wanted was I wished one of those therapists had like grabbed me by the shoulders and said, Mary, you feel like you're giving 150%.
yeah.
And you are. You're showing up all the time. But what if I were to tell you you could just show up a little bit differently some of the time? And I feel like if someone had explained that to me, I don't know, I would have burst into tears actually, but it would have really helped. And so that's what I try to teach parents.
And how old
But,
were your daughters when this kind of revelation
well,
came to you?
I guess, when it came to me, really not till they were probably the eldest was, a solid teen, 14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
Because the teen years, the tween years really when it got really hard. I had one with medical issues, and she started to get angry at the world, and rightfully. She had three sisters who were sort of natural athletes, right? So it's fun to do well in sports and all the friendships. And she'd been in and out of the hospital, and life had been a lot more complicated. And when that anger started coming to the surface, and I didn't really know how to handle it, and I didn't get the learnings for how to handle it.
Right.
It only escalates. And not only does it create problems in the family, but by not addressing what was driving that anger, I let a therapist address it, but by me not address it, I think, I let things get wired in that I wish I hadn't. And so my regret is that I had a real opportunity to wire some things differently. And my kids do well. From the outside, we look like a model family, right? But I know the struggles they have, or this or that, or what's been wired, or where their self-doubt is. And there were hard years. And it's such a waste to have a hard years and those fun years. It was when you have them home. So that's what I got into. And I'm going to stop there and have you ask any questions.
I would suspect that the challenge is how to have a conversation with your daughters rather than be directing them. and saying, well, this is what you're experiencing, this is what you be thinking, but instead just have that conversation and say, so what are you experiencing? What are you feeling? Do you know why you feel that way? Let's talk about it. I mean, I think we're not trained to do that as parents. We're hardly even
No,
trained to do that as people.
we're not trying to do it as people. Like a lot of us grew up really not knowing how to listen.
Right.
And, and also if you think about it, the first few, even, well, let's just say year for the sake of argument, of the child's life, they are completely dependent on you. So, you're told to be fully in charge from the get-go. Then they get difficult because suddenly they're two, and you had this cherub, and now they're difficult at two or three, and so it's hard to know what to do, and and then we get triggered. So you are right, and a lot of times, just to respond to one thing you said, that's sort of how are you feeling and why are you feeling that way. A lot of times they don't know, and so there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, I call them micro steps, a whole bunch of things that I use, but sometimes it's just sometimes it's if they're younger, it's naming it for them. You're
Yeah.
really mad we can't have cookies for dinner. Yeah, I wish we could have cookies for dinner too. Let's think of a day we can have cookies for dinner this week.
Yeah.
But when you're in a rush, it's not something you necessarily think of. So because I'm very frenetic, clearly, you could probably already tell from the way I talk. I first started by writing these things that I called micro steps, which
Hmm.
was because I felt like it really helped to understand what was going on in the brain. So I really wanted to simplify the brain science, give an example, and then say, just try this today. So one of my favorites along your line is before even having to discuss how they feel and trying to figure it out, I call it accepting is not agreeing.
Oh,
Because you can accept that someone's thinks
that's
their
very
teacher's
good.
stupid without saying, well, you're gonna have to go to school for the next 18 years, so you better learn to like them. Or, well, that's not true. You love your teacher. That accepting piece can be really hard. It's still hard for my husband. Although I don't know if he's listening, but this is my husband. I feel like you're being a jerk. So we have a little bit of a hard time with the feelings and accepting feelings.
Yeah.
But you can understand how accepting in and of itself already does something.
Hmm. It kind of neutralizes the antagonism that's there.
And it also validates that you're not crazy
Right.
and what you're feeling is okay.
When I won't go into the whole backstory, but when my oldest was 11, 12, and my youngest was like 5, I realized that I needed to change the way I talked to my children. And I decided I would treat them as adults. And so they would they would say, "So why did so and so say that to you?" You know, or why did so and so say that? Or why, what? And I said, "I don't know. What do you think?" And over time they began to think for themselves. And in thinking for themselves, they began to be able to communicate better to me what they were experiencing. And then the turning point was when they began to advise me on my behavior, but in a very loving and gentle way. They said, "Dad, you need to do this. This is not healthy for you to keep not saying things or doing things or something like that." I said, "Okay." I said, "Of course, this is only going to complicate things. It doesn't matter. This is for you, Dad." I said, "Okay." And it did make things worse, but it would make
That's
things
funny.
better between me and in this case, it was my daughter. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's
very,
hearing them. I really love one of my chapters in my book I just call curiosity. And I love the way, in fact, I'm going to write one. I write these things now that I call MicroStep Tuesday.
yeah.
I just, I'm always changing how I do it. And I've gotten really, really good feedback on it. Like, I think I make a point pretty quickly and people get it and they walk away with something. And the idea of just don't answer. Ask them.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
because a huge driver of misbehavior, there's obviously a lot of things, but is a lack of control. Because everybody, 4, 14, 40, 80, has a desire for control. And if we're constantly telling, constantly doing, constant opining, constantly pontificating, you
Yes.
feel like, and so it sounds to me like you grabbed that. But were you also good at, because what I also hear when you say that is, treated them like adults. But there's a little bit of treating like adults now that's leading to a permissiveness that kids don't want.
Mm-mm. It's not that at
Because they
all.
also, and I wondered if boundaries were easy for you, like they weren't for me. Was it easy to say no?
It allowed me to be honest with them.
Say more.
And I
What does
could
that mean?
say, um, I know this is what you want to do, but this is what's going to happen. This is not a very good idea. And over time you could say that. Um, and and like on decisions, like my oldest is 40 now, so we're talking almost pre-digital era. When he
Okay.
was 10 or 11, it was about 11, I guess it was. And we had one computer in the house, and we had just bought cell phones. So, we're talking about dark ages. And he came to us and said, I'd like my own computer. And
And remind me his age?
he was 11, 12, about
11-ish.
11. And he says, I want to write. I want to teach myself how to write. I want to write novels. And so we found him a used computer and bought it for him. Because what we felt was that when he expressed something like that, he's telling us, I want to do something that matters to me.
Yeah, I love it.
And as a result, he spent 2 or 3 hours a day writing, and he ended up writing an alternative history of World War II.
At 11.
Well, it took him 2 years, but yeah. So it was by the time he turned 13, he had finished it, but it was like 175,000 words. I mean,
And what a great thing to be able to talk about at dinner,
yeah. And he
right?
and he said, I want to be able to write dialogue and I want to be able to write battle scenes. He's a
I
boy.
love that. And did he ever pursue that any further?
Oh yeah.
Good for
So
him.
he published his first novel 3 years ago, and he's got two more that he will finish this year. And so
Good for
yes, he's
him.
a novelist. And when I read the first one that he wrote, he's writing a series of novels about the lineage of a farm family in Piedmont, North Carolina, between the 1840s and the present day, and trying to kind of illustrate what the family farm, particularly subsistence farming, was like during those years.
Yeah.
And the first volume, he writes about the boy in the family going off to fight in the Second World War, and he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay and farm. And as I read it, I was stunned by how well he had done the characterizations of the characters in
Yeah.
the book.
Fantastic. Which I don't think is easy. I mean, I wrote a book. I mean, I know a lot of people write books now, but for me, I had these moments, and then I'm going to go back to him, not just talking about me, but
Yeah,
I then needed anecdotes in between the chapters.
right.
So I told these stories, and apparently I write in my voice, so that's good because it makes it a little bit easy.
Very good.
But
Yeah.
but when I finished, and people are like, oh, it's so great you published a book. I said, yeah, I published a book. That's great. But I didn't have to do anything like character development, themes, following something from the beginning to the end, closing up any loose holes, any, loose
Yeah. Yeah.
whatevers. And so I really admire people that do that because it's hard.
Well, I'm writing my first novel, and yes,
I loved
hard is
writing.
not the word. It's such a different way of thinking.
It's a different way, and I spend too much time writing because I enjoy it. And so then I spend a lot of time getting the right word, but I find it so satisfying.
You don't spend too much time writing. There's
Yeah,
no
well,
there's no
there's
amount
no
of
such
time to
thing.
too much time writing,
Tell
because
my business coach that. But I do enjoy it. But I was going to say, just you were talking about your sons, and I don't know you well, as we already determined, but you seem to have this sort of fairly gentle, grounded approach.
very,
And in parenting, that really helps. And what is, because I think what you were able to, you were able to use these tools you have to be able to listen, to let them talk, to not be in a rush or worried about where they were going to tell them things. But I also heard you say something that was really interesting, which was you said, when I said no, I said, yeah, I get that you want that, but it's not negotiable.
yeah,
And one of my first, these MicroStep Tuesdays, that was one of the first that I wrote. And it's very hard, I think, for parents. It was very hard for me for whatever reasons. I grew up a people pleaser. Boundaries were very hard. But that it's not negotiable is very hard in this day and age, in a world where it's very child centric. And if you watch TV programs, which I don't really, but I watch them so that I know,
yeah,
Disney channels, the parents are like goofy parents.
right,
The kids are the ones who know everything.
right.
And so being able to just say, yeah, that's not the way it is. It's not negotiable. Kids actually love that,
Hmm.
which is why you might have had well-behaved kid. Well, I hope there was some misbehavior, but kids that basically followed the rules because they feel safer.
I think that the real challenge is not between the parent and the child. It's between
Uh-huh.
the two parents who have different ideas about what they want for their children. And so how do you talk to parents about how they communicate with each other so that what their children are seeing is a healthy way of being married?
So it's funny. I just this came up at a women's group I was talking with the other night, and we talked about that. So first of all, your question was, what do you tell people? The first thing that comes to mind that I just want to address is what I see often more than a difference in values is a difference in how they think they're going to get the outcome that they want.
Hmm.
So if we can, the first thing that I would always recommend doing is stepping back and saying, what are the values we have here? What do you want? What do you want your kid to become? It's usually not one saying, well, I want them to be a doctor, and the other one saying, well, I want them to be an NBA player. That might be, but usually that's not the issue. Usually is it, he's so soft on her. She just lets him get away with everything. But he's such an authoritarian. So usually it's that. So if we can start, and I'm thinking of a couple I'm working with at the moment where, they were having a really hard time over something because they reacted to a very scary incident with their child in different ways. And when they're on the phone with me, of course, I can get each person to draw out and say things, and the other person can hear it. And at the end of the conversation that day, what they both walked away with was, oh, we actually both want the exact same thing. One of them has a very hard time articulating that he's really appreciative of the other one, right? So a lot of that is interpersonal dynamics that you're talking about. So then then it depends on the couple. Some people are dug in. One feels they have to be authoritarian, and one feels they have to be softer. And I can think of a different couple where they were on such opposite ends that it became very hard because one of them had to stop parenting the way they were parenting.
Right.
Yeah, you had, and I had my own opinion that we had to stop letting the 4-year-old decide what he got to, whether he went to grandma's house for their birthday cake or not, you
Oh,
know.
it was at
But
that
she
level.
thought, but she thought that that's what she was reading. She was hearing respect, and I have to respect him, and I have to hear him, and I have to have empathy. So I'm gonna let you respond to that, and then I have another comment that
Well,
came
it's
to mind.
that's not treating the child as an adult. It's treating the child as the the boss of the family. That's,
which is scary, which is not good
which
for
is
the
very
child.
scary because then they take that into their marriages and they take that into their business life and they end up alone eventually because nobody wants to be around that kind of
That's one, and I
egotism,
think yes, and I think we
narcissism, whatever you want to call
that can be narcissism exactly. And then the other thing I think that happened to me is I went out and took care of myself because I had to. I wasn't destitute. There's some people that really do survive things. I mean, I lived
it.
in a
Right,
very nice house, blah, blah, blah. But I took care of me and I had
right.
to take care of me. And luckily, I was gifted with some things that helped. But what I found is I'm very hard on myself. And part of that comes from being a perfectionist, but part of it also comes from there was no one else putting the rules in place.
Hmm.
So in my case, I had to put those rules in place.
Hmm.
And if you're doing that to yourself, then when you don't do well, then you have to get hard on yourself. Not everybody reacts that way, but that also can happen. They need that parent to be blaming. So it's both those things, I think. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Well, and I think that's where the child, when you can develop the right kind of communication with the child is going to tell you when they see things that are not healthy. And one of my two sons, the other son, ended up becoming a psychotherapist. Why?
Oh,
I don't know precisely why, but that's where he ended up. And he's really good at it. And
well, I'm
he
sure.
is dealing with some really complex things, most of them having to do with families.
That's interesting. Most of them have to do with families. I know all my family work is going to the therapist. I had the right idea though 10 years ago. But no,
Yeah.
no, I love working with the parents, but families and older families, right? Also, I don't know if he does family. Does he actually do family therapy? Because that is a
Well,
skill.
no, he's just going to work with the parents.
He
He's not
works with the
working.
parents. Yeah.
Now I'd say that, and now I'm questioning whether that's true. I think if he was, I think if the situation presented itself, he would work with the child too.
Yeah. And I'm just saying when you have three or four people in the room, it's hard. A lot of
Well,
triangles, a
he
lot of
brings in someone
loyalties.
else with him in those
Then he brings in
situations.
someone else with him.
So he's
Okay. Yeah.
got he's got people he can draw upon. Uh, it's so interesting. There are two current TV shows on. I'm curious as to whether you've seen them. They're polar opposites in every way. One is Taylor Sheridan's newest one called The Madison.
Yeah. Crazy.
You seen it?
I've only like I've seen some of it, little bit. I have not
Okay.
watched the whole series.
But you've seen enough to
I
know
know enough to know about it, and I kind of did a little reading on it, and I watched it. Watched. I'm kind of dying to watch more of them.
it's
They're both a
it's
little
right
crazy.
down your alley
I know. That's why I feel like I
because
need to
it's
watch
really
more.
not about the husband and the wife. It's about the mother and the children and the grandchildren.
Yes, and can I in this conversation can I take us back to another thing you said?
Sure, of course, you're in charge.
No, no, you're in charge. So
No, no, no.
you said,
This is your episode. You get to decide what we do. That's
well, I
that's,
said we
that's
talked
the rule.
about how I thought you probably had a very good relationship with your children, and you said, well, I think the issue is not always the parent to the child. I think it's the parents with each other. And I said, absolutely, that's one. And again, it's more usually how rather
Mhm.
than what and why. Sort of how and when tend to be the problem. Not always, but but the third one, and I talk about this one a lot when I speak, is I would argue that the battle is not between the parent and the child, but the parent and themselves.
Yes, I agree.
And so I'd love to think about that as we talk about these two programs, because there's some things I see in a couple of the characters where that battle is what's creating the problems. And until that internal battle is kind of figured out, they're in a really hard place. And just for the listeners, I'd love to do one example because I think you probably got me right away. But a great example of what I'm saying is Um, let's say you're a perfectionist. There's a lot of them out there. And now it's going to be in that DM5 thing soon, where we tie our worth to our output, to our performance.
Yes.
And they now say that's like the third or fourth driver of mental health issues behind, homelessness and abuse or something. You know what I mean? It's crazy how high up there it is. And so I say, so you have children, and in your mind, you think they need to excel because I was like this, but thankfully I had an awareness around it. But they've got to do well because that's where I felt my worth, right? So they need to do well. They need to excel. They got to win at stuff. But that was really coming from something in my head that was saying, I'm not enough. When I'm successful and perfect and have everything under control, then I'll be worthy. And what that can look like is the child, and I'm going to hasten to say that I didn't do this, but the child comes home from school with a B. And it's like, really? You got a B? How are we ever going to get you into the honors class in ninth grade?
Mm-hmm.
And so we see the battle between the kids, which is like, well, he doesn't try enough. And he thinks, well, she's always on me. But the battle's here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, huh, I'm having a hard time sitting with the fact that he got a B. Maybe he needs to try harder. Maybe he's not as, maybe whatever. He doesn't have good grades yet. A lot I could go into there, but I don't want to. Um, but in these shows, there's so much dysfunction that's been developed in the characters from their childhood
Right.
that none of them can sit. I feel like none of them can feel anything without changing it or fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the one I want to talk about? I don't know, just always looking at the capability from the outside. That's how she fixes everything. The threat of being ordinary.
Or I think a way to say it is that all the solutions are outside of the family, or outside. I have to go find it and bring it in. I have to acquire it
I have to acquire it. And
instead of it
that is,
being
go ahead,
inside here.
instead of it being here. And that is wiring. It's hard to change because, and I can speak to this personally, that I can be working on something and then I can see something else, a book that's done really well, right?
Right.
Of course, there's books that have done better than me. I'm not, whoever, right? I'm not Brene Brown. And I will suddenly, like, my whole, like, not, it depends on the day, right? But on a day where I haven't been to yoga, I haven't done all my things, I will actually feel lousy and not be able to work on my stuff
Right.
because it is, in fact, a survival instinct
Yes.
of, oh no, I am now not worthy. Even though so then you have to get up, you got to get that out of your head, and then you got to go on. But without that awareness, if that just comes out on your kids, it's very hard.
Well, our world is filled with those signals. They're telling us that all the time. And
Yeah.
and the question is, can you walk away from those signals or see them for what they truly are as a highly manipulative, a culture of a culture of manipulation that is trying to reduce you to thing, one type of person. And if you're not that person, and you're not that person, if the world of that is the personification of that person is a mess, then you're a mess. So all this external projection of ourselves onto something out there, it's like the way people treat politics. Because I don't want to necessarily talk
Yeah.
about pro and con or anything, but the way so many people have responded to Donald Trump is that he's a threat to me as a person. But he's just a guy who ran for political office or got elected, and he's doing his thing. He's doing what every president does. But somehow people have attached their own sense of being to him being evil. And because
Their own sense of being, like, just do that one more time.
well, I'll restate it in a different way. Um, he's a threat to who I am as a person. I can't be my true self as long as he exists in the world. Or you can take, you can take any other kind of situation, and we reduce ourselves down to this one thing. And so I've got to have the right hair, you know.
Yeah.
And and if
Yeah.
my hair's not right, then I'm never going to be right. Something external. Hair is external.
Yes.
You got beautiful hair. I just got old man's hair here. And but you see, something external to we allow something external to us to
Sure.
define who we are. And when that thing fails, you know, I'm a Tar Heel, so when the Tar Heels lose in the first round of the basketball
Oh,
tournament, is it a crushing blow? It used to be a crushing blow because my identity was wrapped up in being a basketball fiend. It's no longer
right.
that.
Right.
And what happens, and you're the expert here, is that when we take on that an adult, when we take something external like that and become so closely identified with that, then our children pick up on that. And either they follow in that or they see that as traumatic and they feel trauma because of it.
Well, they feel everything. If you're not aware of what you're passing on, they're getting it without you realizing it,
Yes.
which is why people wake up and say, how come I do things just like my mother? The last thing I wanted to be was my mother because they've basically, on a practically cellular level, taken it all in. Um, and for the fun of talking about the movies, which is the character I saw, Kay, because then I went and looked her up, right? Kay's the crazy one. No, which one? Kay's the one who raised Dorothy's child, right?
Right. Yeah.
And from the outside, she did everything she was supposed to.
Right.
She kind of looked like this perfect, yeah, just her version of like competence and control,
Oh,
and
you're
I'm doing it
talking
all
about
right.
Scarpetta.
Scarpetta.
Yeah. No, that's the exact opposite of the Madison.
Why do you see it as the exact opposite?
Um, because in the Madison, they're becoming very aware of of what they have done to themselves.
Correct.
In Scarpetta, they're still in the victim mode of blaming,
Right.
and the sister, Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yeah.
is the greatest example of what narcissism has ever been in the history of film. I
Yeah,
like,
she's great.
yeah. So those two things should be watched together. I watched them. I
Yeah.
watched all six or whatever episodes of each within about a weekend. A weekend.
Oh yeah, I should. I may have to do it because one of them, the grief brings it all up because
Yeah.
they have nowhere else to go, and the other ones, it was so dysfunctional that they've kind of packed it away in a drawer called work or whatever, and they've packed it away and they refuse to open it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're stuck, right? And they're not bad people or bad families, right?
No, they aren't.
And so I heard you say something about the culture, and I don't know if it's in those movies too, in those shows, the culture driving us to be one certain thing.
Hmm.
And what is that? Is that like social media telling you you have to be good, cute in this, or is that how you have to be successful, or that you have to have a 10,000 square foot house, and if you live in this town, and what is that you're referring to?
I'm referring to something I call the culture of simulation, and that it is the way we project messaging in the world, and the simulation is a simulated reality. So you look at YouTube videos. This is a YouTube video, but this is much more real. We're having
Yeah.
real conversation, but so many of those are are manufactured stories that are not really reflective of life or reality. And yet people look at that and say, that's what I want to be. And
Yes.
so they take I go deep in some of my writings. I go deeper into this, but what I see is that the whole mechanism of messaging in the modern world is intended to seduce us to take on what I call a false consciousness. And that false consciousness says, I'm this thing. And if you're different, then you're a threat to me. And therefore, I am being controlled by some force that causes me to be always at odds with people. And I'll give you one example of,
You are a threat to me is interesting. I mean, I
yeah.
can see, again,
I,
let's not go in politics. I can see in politics a little bit because that's your leader. But it's interesting that, go ahead, keep going. I want to hear
well,
how that
this is
works.
a month before the 2020 election. And I was with a friend of mine. We weren't great friends. We've been friends for 5 or 6 years. And I was visiting him and we spent the day together and I had a great time. And I recorded some stuff. I was going to produce a video on the work that he was doing. And then he made a comment to me about Trump. And it was a comment of 6 statements, accusations about him. And I'd heard these before in the same order, in the same wording. And I just said, well, I don't hate him or love him. I just see him as a disruptor of the political process. And he turned around to me and looked at me and says, you're insane, you're crazy, and you're a threat to democracy. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just a guy who looks at things as objectively as I can, and that's what I see. And he says, no, you're being lied to, and he just tore into me, and it ended the relationship because I didn't agree with him, and therefore I was a threat to his own sense of well-being, which was based upon some kind of programming that he had felt. Now, I'm not saying that he was wrong or right. I'm saying that the way he handled it as a person in his relationship to a friend was unhealthy.
And so the question is, because there's so much, you know, and I completely understand that. And as we know, that's driven a lot of things. And I'm not going to pretend I don't feel that sometimes. Like I feel very
Me too.
strongly,
Oh yeah,
right? Right. But I also recognize, and not going to say I'm necessarily good at in the political field. It's, I guess it makes it so obvious in the politics right now because there is a big divide, right? But none of us are going to get anywhere if we don't get in the room and have healthy conflict, right? We're
Mhm.
just not going to get anywhere. That's the reality.
Right.
Um, we're just driving us down. And so there's two things that come to mind, and I'm just going to make a note for the second one. Um, the first one is, I talk a lot about the wiring of the child. And I'm going to just veer for a second because I love this model and I'm trying to do a TED talk related to sports. But my model is basically on the x-axis is potential,
Hmm.
but not potential in terms of what salary can you make, what honors class did you get into, how many APs did you do, how big is your car, what kind of house did you drive? More, how much of your best brain comes online when you're under pressure. And I love your example because I'm having a hard time articulating in a way that's easily grabbable by the general audience. How does your best brain come online when you're under stress? And the example of what you just gave me is he is reacting from something that's coming from his survival system,
That's right.
whether that is when someone threatens me because they're mean to people or they let people out of jail and I don't agree with that, that scares me. Or whether it's coming from a place of I like being in control and Ed's not listening to me and I need to be in control. I need to be the one who's heard and listening or, getting it right. It could be a bunch of things that are driving it. And either of those are coming from his survival system.
That's right.
And so you know that, and I know that. So he's in fight or flight. So he is not accessing his potential because he's a human and we've been gifted. with empathy, reason, moral guidance, ability to prioritize, organize, be responsible. And when we can't access that, I see that as not as high on your potential line. I'm kind of backwards on the thing, but on your
I
potential
got it.
line as you could be.
Yes.
And time times the y-axis. And so then I say over time, kids are born basically with infinite potential. Let's just assume the two kids are born in the same neighborhood, same means. I think there's a lot of real things that impact
Right.
potential,
Hmm.
right? Homelessness, not having money, all kinds of things, health. But if two kids are similar and they start out on their line, they start out on their curve, they're going in the same direction. So what is it that increases or reduces their potential? And what I feel like is there's this connection piece, and
Hmm.
it's wiring in things like I matter.
Right.
I am important even if I lose. I can let my kids have their own opinion, and that doesn't make me lesser, that's not I mean, that's not wired in, but the wired in piece is that I'm comfortable with my own ideas and other people can have others because my worth is not driven by that. And so then what they say is over time, if you get those wiring points right, and you only have to get them right like 30% of the time, that curve actually compounds.
Yeah.
And what's happening now, and so you end up left with a gap between where you went, where you arrived versus where you could be. And I feel like where you could be that's missing is you may make a lot of money and do really well and achieve in this culture that you're talking about. But if you don't have access to the best part of your brain when you're stressed, then when you lose your job, you go into depression. When someone disagrees with you about some political figure, you lose a friend. So you can see I'm still not perfect at articulating it, but
No, I think you're right on the money.
that gap is what scares me.
Yes. I mean, the way I would say what you're saying is that we begin to have the wisdom to see how things influence us, and we can respond appropriately to things that are happening, both on a positive level and on a negative level, because we are gaining some sort of perception of ourselves that which allows us to believe in ourselves. And belief is kind of an awkward, strange word, but if we talk, say, about a parent believing in their child, and the child realizes, well, no one else believes in me, but my mother believes in me. That mother has had an impact upon that child in a way that no one else will ever have. And maybe it's enough for her to get through some, like the first semester of college, where everything is so alien that I know I can do this because my mother told me she believes in me and that whatever I face, I can get through that.
So that's exactly it. And that I believe in you is one of the things that I would talk about wanting to wire in.
Right?
A lot of it comes from a feeling of safety.
Mm-hmm.
Safety is recovery. When the zebra was chased by the lion, when they felt safe, they could then recover and eat and digest and go hide behind the tree and whatever.
Right.
But it's in that safety. And so what I where I think we have an opportunity, and again, I'm looking at 30% of the time. I'm not asking parents to get it right all the time, is to recognize the opportunity to build the wiring that you're talking about so that we're wiring things that say that a lot of the people on Madison and Scarpetta didn't have what you just said. I can do hard things. I can handle hard things. I'm worthy despite my success. I'm okay even if someone doesn't think I'm right.
So let me ask you this. do we ever reach a point where we've kind of, okay, I've gotten where I wanted to be in this regard, in the what you just described? Or are we going to live this way all the way through the end of our lives?
So it's funny you say that because I say that every now and then just to push back on people. I'm like, maybe it's just AI. Maybe this is it. Maybe we're just going to have to live with this like this. And that's just the way it is. Um, so I personally don't think because it's taken millions of years for our brain to get where it is. We're growing constantly in our capacity and our understanding, right?
Mhm. Yes.
But it hasn't, the survival system hasn't adapted. That's the problem, right? It hasn't adapted. And if it's already been millions of years between the lifetime of you and the next few generations, it's a drop in the water. So I don't think the brain is going to change quickly enough. That's my opinion. So then you have tools, whatever. Let's say we all become robots and we decide, I mean, I still feel better when I talk to someone and I smile in person, right?
Yeah.
So can we replace that? I don't know. Um, but I guess what I'd love to believe is we could maybe make a difference in some people's that feeling of angst and not being good enough and yeah, that sort of unhappiness by bringing some awareness to how we could do things a little bit differently to help them wire their brains. I say it like this. I say the mismatch for parenting is they're trying to develop a stone age brain and wiring in a nonstop burnout culture.
Yeah.
And that mismatch is enormous. So, can we just at least start to understand that so we can do it slightly differently? We can still want our kid to be the best hockey player out there, but can we do it in such a way that they just grow with a little bit stronger mental health so they don't have to suffer the way so many people do? I don't know. I didn't really answer your question, but I don't think it's, I don't, the answer is I don't think we can get rid of it all, and I don't know that we're going all the way there.
Well, I think it comes to what we intend, what our intention is.
It's what our intention
Do
is.
we want to get to some place where we don't never have to deal with this again? Or do we accept this as this is the way life is? And I mean, I'm committed to working until I'm 100.
I think as a the driving forces, although I may be wrong, right? Because there's a lot of meditation, there's a lot of people that do it, that are really trying to bring awareness. That my business coach is a consciouspreneur. Everyone she works with are people who are trying to better the world. But it's hard to beat the lobbyists, right? And you can see it more and more now, right? Money, power. And I just read an article yesterday, not a great way to end this, but I just read an article on Ozempic yesterday. And um, what the article was about was how many other things Ozempic was helping. It was surprising. Who knows if it's placebo or what it is. If it's weight related, that makes sense to me. You lose weight, you feel better. But these were sort of controlling for weight. It was still having things. And I thought to myself, I think antidepressant drugs sort of work. I think anti-anxiety drugs do work, but they come at a big cost. Antidepressant, I think depends on who you are. I don't think they're that great. Um, Not that they don't work for some people, right? But I came away from that article thinking that's really what Big Pharma wants. A pill so that you're, and I chat GBT'd it. Could you do a lobotomy of the amygdala? And you can't because you need both pieces to be able to make
Yeah.
really good. You need your emotions in your gut to be able to use all of this. So you can't actually do it. But that's where my mind went. I thought that's what people want, to just get rid of this piece. I don't know. There you go. There's the throw it out there piece. That's not my work, everybody. No lobotomies.
Yeah. I think I think that what we're understanding is changing. And I think um, we entered a new age about 50 years ago, and that age has kind of run its course. And I think we see
Yes.
both the positive and the negative of it, and that
Yeah.
something else is now emerging. And um, and I'm um, more positive about what I see happening. So,
Oh, well, that's good.
I'm yeah, I don't. It doesn't mean that we're not going to go through hard times, but I think we'll come through it better than we would have 20 years ago.
Good.
So here's my last question for you, because I could talk with you for 2 or 3 more hours. Because um, um, one of the things I have begun to do over the last year is focus on younger generations, and I just did a podcast series on listening to younger generations, and I talk with them all the time, and so I'm talking to your children's generations, my children's generations,
Mm-hmm.
and I love them. I am so taken with the ones that I've met,
Mm,
because the ones I met have taken initiative at a very young age. Like one of the young women I met, she's 17. She started her own business.
mm.
And she was on a family vacation and they got a tour of some restaurants in a town. And she says, I can do that. So she started a food tour of her community. And she has people coming from out of state to come do her food tour.
Wow.
And then I met this other 17-year-old girl, and she's written her first novel, a
Yeah.
fantasy novel, and it's an interspecies novel. I mean, where does that come from? I mean, it's amazing. I'm taken with these young people and what they bring, and so what I'm interested in with them is how do they look at themselves as future parents, future
Yeah.
spouses in families. And so my question really is, where do you see the the social structure of families going in the future of the next generation? Can you speak to that?
I don't, ha- I don't have I don't have a good opinion based on anything really. So I want to be very clear about that. It's not something I've pondered and thought a lot
Okay.
about.
Yeah.
Um, the thing I would say that I've realized, I guess because I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. And one thing I've realized in my work with parents and then my own family is really the importance of all of that. And I wonder if that will start to become important again, because definitely the last 50 years was like, you can do it alone. You can make it. You can go get it. You don't need anyone else. And is that going to change because life's a little harder now? Because I have this feeling of like, I want my kids to live near me. And I haven't set my life up for that at all because I lived abroad for years. I ran a business in Switzerland. I lived all over the place. So I've encouraged them to fly. So it's not like I've held them, but I feel like I could make life a little easier for you. Not with stuff, but just by having a matriarch and a patriarch around, even
Yes.
within, and, and I wonder if because life is getting a little bit harder, which I just feel like it is overall, the stuff we're watching, the stuff we're seeing, everything, and whether it's pricing or the ability to buy houses or the confusion, will that come back a little bit? Because that would be a benefit. Because if families break up more, I don't think that's going to be helpful.
Yeah. I'm still asking the question.
And I
But what
think a lot of young people are afraid to have kids.
I know they are, for
And that
for a host of reasons.
for a lot of real reasons. And
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see. Even the next 10 years, I think, matter a lot.
What is interesting to me is the number of young families I've met where they don't have one child, they have 4 or 5 children. And I'm thinking, what is it? What is it that has affected them that which said, we want to have a big family? Whatever it costs, we want to have a big family. I mean, and I have
Very
had the,
stereotypical. Is that Catholic or is that across the board?
it comes out of a conservative Protestant orientation,
Right.
not Catholic. Not, well,
Not
it may
Catholic.
be Catholic, but my interaction
Conservative
with Catholics are
Protestant.
not,
Yeah.
but it
It
is,
is conservative
it's a conservative, we want families and we want, and,
because the average is not big families.
oh, I know,
Right.
or families at all, or marriage at all.
So yeah, so what is and marriage? I happened to be at an event this weekend, which was in a more of a rural area. And I want to say every parent I talked to, I don't care if they were 27 or 80% were divorced.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Okay, so how do we end on something positive?
Well, tell me what is, um, I want to cry about this. Tell me about how you and your daughters are working through all this today. Is that a positive thing with your daughters?
Working through all of this being
Pa- Being the adult, but they're also adults.
so yeah, so that's new world for me. Um, and I would say,
Are you hopeful? Let me put it that way. Are you hopeful?
I'm very hopeful, and I want to add, I am really blessed with really, really good kids. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of issues, a lot.
Of
And I
course.
made some enormous, enormous mistakes that I would do anything to take back. And so, yeah, it brings tears to my eyes because, I feel the weight of it on me. And I will say I've seen, a couple things even happen in the last few weeks where a child has been able to do something vis-a-vis the other members of the family, if we want to think about the crazy, Madison and Scarpetta, right? Where they've been able to do something which is a little out of their norm and out of their comfort for the betterment of the family and for the betterment of their relationships. And that's all I can give now. That was my focus because I learned all this a little bit late. Not late. If you can get to your kids, come to me between the age of 5 and 13, and you're way ahead. It's harder as they get older, and so kids are malleable and they're listening, and they even old. Everybody wants to do well. Really, that is so. If we can give people the space to do well, they will. And sometimes you have to be the adult, even when they're adults.
Yeah.
I can ask them to be more of an adult now,
Yeah.
but from
It gets
very
better.
young,
It'll get better.
and yeah, and from very young, you have to be an adult. And so I think that's a positive. And the other positive thing I want to just throw in case parents listen is you do not have to get it all right. Literally start with one or two things that are going to wire in one or two good things because I definitely got a lot of them wrong.
I think it's safer to say you'll never get it all right, but you
Yeah.
can get it enough right so that your
You
children
get
will
the
love you
curve.
for, yes, for that potential curve.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You get it right enough that you can close the gap. Maybe that's what it should be called. You ever been to London? Close the gap.
Yeah.
You know
Mind the
that the
gap.
mind the gap. Oh, shoot, it's mind the
There it
gap, not
is.
close the gap.
Well, it's been great having you. Send me whatever you'd like to go in the show notes.
Perfect.
I know you have a book out,
Mhm.
and I need to get some copies of your book because I have I have family that I think would benefit from your book, and
Aw.
um, I,
Such a pleasure to talk to you. You're really like you said, I could talk to you forever, but I think you could probably talk to anyone forever.
well, I find everybody interesting, and you're
Yeah, so
very
me too.
interesting, you see, you're not the first mother who has staked out a place in the business world as a mother to talk about mothering. I've had
Mm.
several on, and they all have a different approach to it, and it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, and I love talking to people about their families, And it- so, yes. So send me whatever you want to put,
Will
put
do.
out there, and maybe we'll have some more conversation about this. And if I'm really going out on a limb, so if any of your daughters would like to talk with me on the podcast,
On your youth one.
well, it's the same podcast.
It's
I
the
just
same
did a
podcast. Got
series,
it.
but I'm gonna keep interviewing Gen Zs, and I'm looking forward
Oh,
to
they are all different and they all have opinions. One's in Sydney, one's in I mean, I'll tell them all. I will connect you to all of them.
we'll send them this.
I will
And then
send them
you
this.
can just all you have to do is just introduce me to them, and I'll send them an invitation, and we
Perfect.
take it from there. Um, because I think these conversations are really important because I know that a lot of people have found themselves in a position in their both in their married life and their family life that they didn't expect to find themselves at that point, and they don't understand why things have turned out the way they do.
Yeah.
Because it's not like their parents' world or their grandparents' world, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it is that way.
It is that way.
So,
Well, good for
so
you. It's great. I want to listen to them.
thanks, Mary, for being here. Thank you all for watching the Eddie Network podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.